Welcome to the Data Strategy Show. My name's Samir Sharma and I'll be your host for the next 50 minutes. My guest today is the fantastic Antje Bustamante. Antje is the Director of Data and Analytics at Zoopla, where she's been working since September 2019. With over 18 years of experience, Antje has built award-winning teams across analytics, data science and data engineering for marketplace companies across Europe, such as Immobilien Scout24. Her experience lies in building data product teams that drive direct and indirect monetization and in driving a data-literate company culture. Antje is passionate about coaching and mentoring young female leaders and wants to empower more women to be successful in the field of data and leadership. Thank you very much for listening to this. Please don't forget to like, share, comment, and hope you enjoy it. Thank you very much. Antje Bustamante, thank you very much for coming on to the Data Strategy Show today. It's a real delight to have you. Antje, why don't you just give us a sort of 30,000 foot view of yourself and where you are currently and what you're doing?
Sure. Thank you so much for having me on the show. I'm really happy. I'm Antje Bustamante. I am the Director of Data and Analytics at Zoopla. I'm in the UK now for about a year and a half. Interesting times.
Interesting year.
Very interesting times.
Yeah.
So I moved for the job about that time ago to London. I was head of data in a company called Scout in Berlin before that. So I'm German. I was born close to Berlin. I'm very, very, very passionate. We hope we get something into it as well. Sort of a data geek kind of, I don't know. Being an analyst, I've studied information science a long time ago. All about sort of more leadership roles and that sort of things that I moved into. And happy to be on the show. Thanks for inviting me.
No, it's a pleasure. So tell me a little bit about your role at Zoopla. Tell us a little bit about what you're currently doing and how data has been a really big influence and how you've started to adapt that within Zoopla.
Yeah, so I am leading different teams with a data function at Zoopla with data science, data engineering, and a big analytics team. And there's also data consultancy function, which we implemented in the last year. So I was interviewed to kind of, come here. We have lots of real estate data. People in Britain are crazy about UK, crazy about real estate. There's so much you can do. I worked for a real estate portal before, so I kind of knew, what the power of it, the magic that can happen if you use it in the right way for people that search for that sort of data, but also that use it, or agents. And so I'm leading those teams. When I started, we were about 8 to 10 people, and now we're 30.
Okay.
Next month, we've onboarded a crazy amount of people in, which is great because I think it shows the investment as well in even pandemic times and whatnot. But we did Zoopla did invest a lot in hiring people. Great talent. So and the idea is to build a function. So for instance, the data engineering team at the time, if someone from Zoopla is listening, don't hate me, but it didn't exist when I started. So I'm not going to pretend everything. We have this amazing, everything's in place.
Yeah, sure.
We have done, I think, a lot of great things in the last year. But it's building a team around sort of how can we leverage the data to become a company that's not only a sort of listing portal, but that solves sort of business issues through data, but also how do you digitize the real estate market? A lot of that stuff is still very God, I'm about to say lame, but very such a very not
very rudimentary, very
offline.
Yeah. Oh, I see. Offline. I got you. Okay. So how do you start to take that and put it online and move it into a more digital view? So just thinking about a couple of the things that you've just mentioned there. One is that you've come in and you're 8 people. you've taken over as the head of data analytics, and suddenly it's like, you've got to build this momentum. You've got to understand what Zoopla's needs are, and it's a pretty big ecosystem. It's just not Zoopla, is it? As you said, it's agencies, and then it's people and customers. So you've got quite a large ecosystem. How did you start to think about building the team out? Because you mentioned that data engineering was sounds to me like the last thing you've done, but also you've done this whole data consultancy piece, which is also quite interesting as well. So how did you go about actually building and scaling this team? It's a lot of questions I get.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting for people, the audience in particular out there, who are thinking about these things. So what were the first things that you did? Firstly, what were some of your challenges, and then how did you start to build that out?
Yeah, so I think the first thing I needed to understand was where Zoopla is at. Like, what is the? I think you did something on this. So I read it again the other day on data maturity.
Yes.
So I think it's not just data maturity; it's business maturity in that sense as well. Because you can be so data mature, but if you don't use that in the right way, then what does the business get out of it? So the first thing I did was, my first 8 weeks, I interviewed about 70 to 80 people.
Wow. Okay.
In the business to really understand. And I always asked them the same sort of 2 to 3 questions. So I had, I could gather data on what's your pain points, how do you access and access data right now, what you do with it. So to get an understanding. And it was pretty clear after a while that, the sort of availability, accessibility, and trust was a big problem.
Right. Okay.
So, and also, I mean that there was hardly any data engineering in the company. I didn't really need an assessment for that. That was kind of pretty obvious. And it was actually the first thing I did. So the first thing, within my first weeks, I got a role live for a lead data engineer, because I thought, okay, I need someone that comes in has architectural knowledge, but also knows proactively how to build sort of a data infrastructure that we're not Google, we're not Netflix, we're not Facebook, but we have a data lake. I don't know if I want to call it a lake, but we have data that we need in a structured, trusted, and available way. So, and with that role coming in, she, my lead data engineer, she basically came in and then built the team. We said, okay, we need, let's say, 6 people. So we focused on that first to really have the team in place, have a structure in place, kind of with the business issues kind of that I had, sort of gathered through that survey that I had gathered. Thank you. Yes.
That's all right.
So that's how that whole kind of, I knew, the challenge was that a lot of people at Zoopla, they were like, oh, we need data science, or we need AI, and we need machine learning. And it's a bit like, all right, party people, let's maybe not do the fifth step before the first, let's kind of, so it was important for someone to come in. The data science team at Zoopla was quite big. If you think about that, there was no data engineering team, but a data science team.
Sure.
So my strategy was, we need to build the foundations first. They really need to map to what, self-service and then all of those things. So it's basically, I focused on building a team that has the data skills and the capacity and the capability to help me build the foundation. And then now we're kind of in that, the data consultancy role came a bit later. You kind of say, oh, whenever someone in the company has a project and they don't really know, do I work with data or not? Like, that's when that data consultancy role comes in. So he's someone that would, be at the beginning of it and kind of listen in and be, you might want to talk to this and this person. You might want to, consider those and those things, because often there's projects in a company started, like CMS system, even a CMS, they're like, oh, why would I involve data? And you're like, maybe there's things that, you want to do with that data you have. And maybe there's things that, you have, I don't know, within the tooling or the process, you need someone that has that sort of capability and knowledge as well.
Sure.
So yeah, I think I'm getting away a bit from your question.
No, that's fine. No,
as you can see, for me, it's a really
it's obviously there was a lot going on when you joined. It's
Yeah.
only been a year and a half, so it's actually, a very short space of time. But as you started to onboard those people, what kind of organization did you start to build? And what I'm getting at here is, what was it very much a central function? Was it a sort of function that was, elastic enough to go out to the business, being a sort of business partnering? Or was it just, I'm going to build these foundations, I'm going to protect everybody, and then I'm going to go out and do stuff? What was your view?
Yeah, so I was lucky enough that I had the opportunity in my previous job to really try out a lot of things as well.
Okay.
So I kind of knew what was working and what wasn't, and also you have a lot with peers as well. We all kind of have the same problem. So I must say that I went quite quickly to a mix of central and decentral functions.
Okay.
And about protection, I think, yeah, of course, sometimes you need to say, especially when, your data engineering team is trying to build your, we call it the trusted data layer, not data lake, but that's our sort of data
trusted data layer. I like that.
Yes, our first data product at Zoopla. And you need some protection of that because they can't be disturbed. Like, this is this needs to get out of the, building. No, you don't say it, but out, out in the open.
Yeah.
With analytics, it was different. Again, the team was very small, and we knew that the data sort of maturity skills, let's say, on asking the right questions outside of the team needed to grow, because otherwise you end up being a service function. You always answer those how many questions. And to be honest, analysts and data scientists, engineers, they're way too expensive to be answering those questions now.
Sure.
So what I did was have a decentral function. We hired most of the people within engineering and analytics, but also a bit of different type, I'd say. So, analysts with a business background, some of them coming from agencies, that kind of knowing, those are the objectives. Not to be too, at the same time, with a good mixture of technical skills. So knowing how to work within AWS and all those things. But yeah, so we had a central team that kind of takes care of the tooling, optimize the A/B testing that we're using, Segment and those other tools, but also our BI tool, and more sort of central projects. And then we have embedded analysts that they sit at home, but they sit within their product team.
Well, currently they do, yeah.
Currently they do, but the idea is to have people really embedded in the sort of business teams to so they really understand their target group, they really understand what's going on, what the sort of questions are, and they can help that team as well to think in the right sort of data analytics way.
No, it's I think that's a really good point, because you need those sort of hybrids that can act very business focused, and then sort of also come back to the center and say, well, I need, I can speak now the technical language. So I think that's very good. From that, then, as you started to scale out and build this reputation of, okay, so we've got a data layer, which is great. We started to build that out. How did you start to show value back to the business? Because building the foundations very much is a, it's setting up the sort of platform, and it doesn't, people continue to think these data people, all they're doing is just playing with data, getting fancy tools, building nice platforms, AWS, and so on. So how do you start to balance the foundational elements with providing value back to the business units and those business partners that you were working with?
Yeah, I guess as data leaders, we all struggle sort of in that same sense that, of course, we have very expensive functions. Every tool we want to use, it's like, what's the ROI on that?
Right.
So I have a very strong business background myself. So I one of my friends kind of said, you love to make money, right? And I'm like, well, for a company. this could end up really wrong. No, you know what I mean? Like, it's in the end,
No, it could
and
end
that's
up
what I
very
keep
right.
on
You never know.
very right, because I think, you know, in the end, what you want, you work for a company, you want your paycheck, you want to learn stuff, you want to progress, you want, you know, your career to be a success, and that's in the end kind of who's my target group, who am I really building that for? So I think there is especially for our trusted data layer, we literally have a story that we tell to the exec team and others to kind of say, and we take a use case that wasn't possible a year ago, but which was bugging a lot of people, like getting data out to customers, building a proper API, having trusted data, because right now also, or right now, but half a year ago, you know, a lot of the things that there were people that spent a lot of time in verifying stuff, and I'm like, imagine if you would, you know, save all that time. So I think it helps to always use a use case where the execs or, you know, management and business people are close to, and they're really frustrated with it. But you as data, you know, this is solvable through infrastructure or data features, data products. And I think once you have people within the company that also bang your same drum, I think that's really when you got it. Like, when I don't have to say those things, but when other people in product say, that's when you need data. And data did, you know, the team helped us. And we have, that's why also this working very close together, because in the end, you need those product managers that go to product review together with an analyst, and they present their solution. And that's when you actually don't get that question anymore. How did you create value? Because you literally sit there and you're like, and the revenue of this is 300,000. And, you know, the conversion rate and logged in sessions is something, you know, we want to have more engaged consumers. So if this analyst and product person sits there literally explaining how the insights led to better product features, and they do that together, you don't really get that question as much anymore. It's kind of, obvious.
And I like that, because you're actually then, you've provided that tool, or you've provided that insight out to a business partner, and they're then tracking and they can bring back with the results. But there are times when that isn't the case. So how you know, and when you started out, I'm sure that was probably not the case. There wasn't a, you know, yes, we're going to get, you know, X amount of ROI, etc. How do you persuade or influence the C-suite to start to think about, well, you know, would you start to do some ROI calculations at the beginning, or you know, rough sort of calculations, and then start to put that forward as a business case? How did you get to that point, which is saying, oh, this thing called data is actually gonna, you know, the earn out on this is quite, you know, good in terms of potential?
Yeah, I think the key was when I started and I presented my diagnostic back. I didn't just present problems. I came back and said, I'm a very, like, if you would see presentations from me, I love to work with GIFs. So there's this one GIF where people are just so nervous and excited and just so happy. I'm like, this is you. I said that to the exec, this is you in a year from now, because you are going to be working with the products that the data team will build together with product, of course, when we don't do this on our own. But I think it's creating this understanding, and what does good look like? What does it really look like? And how does it change? How does it change and influence the sort of challenges I have for a company? So, of course, I mean, honestly, in real estate, you have so many competitors that you know, you don't reinvent the wheel. You can easily go and say, oh, that fancy area recommender, you want that too, and guess what it does? You know, it influences your consumer preference. The more consumer preference you have, the happier our agents, because we send more leads. More leads means more business, and more business means more money. So I think you one thing is really making sure that you don't present the technical solution, because who really cares? Whatever language I use for
absolutely.
that. More, you know, how that feeling you get when something works, when something falls into place, and you're like, you know, because I know it, you know it, when, you know, think about data strategy, those things when all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, this just makes so much sense. And I think that's what you need to be able to translate to see, because they see so many people all day, every day. I mean, I go out of the meeting room and the next person comes in, and this is what marketing does. So having seen, of course, a bit and making that experience, that always helps. But I think you really need to link it back, like the investment, for instance. Now we're going to invest into a new BI tool, and it's also, is it really fancy? Oh God, just another tool, kind of. But how we pitched it was, we said, we are going to use this for customer reporting. So what you can do, so we made a little demo together with the external provider, and showed it and said, this is what the customer can actually, not what the analyst or someone else internally can do, but we can use this as a data product which might do indirect revenue, for instance, because our customers will love it, and then they will spend more money with us.
So is this something that you're going to give to agents, or is this something that you're going to give to the end customer? What's the
agents?
The agents.
The idea would be,
yeah. So they'll start to understand the insights. So it's more like a push out to them. They can start to see how effective you guys are, or is it more around the market, or is it more around,
both? I think it needs to be both, because they need to understand. First of all, I think as a company, you always need to demonstrate your value. I mean, you're spending money, and you want to understand what the value is. So that also helps you in providing more service to that company to understand how you can help. And then the next, I think, is being more of a partnership. You really need to understand their market as well. You really need to get what that agent is actually, what market are they, that they're regionally different, and data helps you do that. So I truly believe that market transparency is sort of that's what agents also want. They want to understand what market with a competitor are in, and all of that. And we have that data, but we need to find a sort of good way of
displaying that.
And it's not that we don't do that, of course. I mean, otherwise, Zoopla wouldn't be in the position they're in right now. Of course, there's lots of great reporting already. It's just more about how do you use that to have a closer relationship, talking about retaining customers as well. But the tool, I think market insights is a big topic for us.
Right.
Definitely.
Okay. So interesting. So I guess because you've got quite a big ecosystem, so your ecosystem, obviously, you're generating, you're almost like, would I call Zoopla an aggregator?
We're a marketplace,
Yeah, you're a marketplace. Okay. So within that, you've got your agents, you might have, I guess, the obviously the end consumer in that.
Homeowner,
the homeowner. Would you have landlords?
Yeah.
So you obviously have a commercial arm as well. So you've got quite a big ecosystem that brings a lot together. How do you effectively monetize a bunch of these different, maybe it's, along the value chain? How do you start to drive out that activity and talk with your business partners to say, look, we want to monetize, not selling data. I'm not talking about that, because I think everybody thinks about, selling data when I use that word with a, big M on it. But it's how do you start to have those conversations about, creating new revenue streams, or getting them to realize the potential of how data could monetize effectively a new revenue stream, or even cost efficiencies across a specific area?
So I think we're all at Zoopla, we're all learning, and I think the conversations, you need to be close to commercial. I mean, in the end, they know what customers are asking for, what the sort of things would be like. I'm not going to sit there and pretend I know, this data and it solves everything for you. So because I think we can be quite on top of stuff, thinking, with data, with data people, we just solve the world problems in the whole world. But no,
of course,
it's, I think there's a strong combination. There's a colleague, for instance, that knows the new homes market inside out. I'm not going to pretend that I know better than he does. So what we do is create a team around a specific problem, let's say market transparency, and there's an analyst in there, there's a commercial person, a marketing person, a product person, maybe an engineer or a scientist, let's say, and then you kind of you create some ideas around that, and you let and test. I think I love consumer and customer testing to get feedback straight away, because you can also fall in love so easily with the stuff that you come up with. And then people look at it and they go, no, thank you very much. So I think you need that very early in the process. And the good thing about Zoopla, I must say, I don't really have that problem to convince people about the importance of data in that sense. Everybody at Zoopla is data hungry, totally data hungry. Like they would say, how do you leverage that data? So it's more, I think it's about finding those use cases together. Like right now, for instance, we're working on a product strategy and data strategy, and we do that at the same time. So it's very clear that my colleague, the VP of product, is not going to come up with stuff that is isolated, and I won't. So I think, I don't know if that helps, but I think it's a lot about creating multi sort of functional teams, not sitting in your, I'm going to go away for 3 months and build this amazing product. Then I come back and everybody's going to cheer on the data scientist that built something.
No, and I think what I like there is the fact that you've brought together teams that, in a modular fashion, and you've brought them from different areas, but you've got that commercial lens on it, as well as saying, we will have a marketing component, we will have a product component here, we will have a sales component from the commercial side. And then you've got the data person or the scientist sort of sitting there helping to understand that business issue or challenge, and then being able to start to innovate with something, maybe very quickly, maybe really in a quick and dirty way, and just saying, look, these are the types of things I've found. Does this make sense to you? No, actually, that just doesn't mean anything. So what's the next? How do we iterate? So would you say these are innovation teams that you spin up? And are they? How do you control that? How do you make sure that you're getting down to some kind of product and path to strategy?
I'm not gonna lie, we're just really early days trying that stuff. So I'd say from my experience from previous roles, it always worked best when you had different disciplines in a room and clear targets. And even if you set objectives to say, the objectives that are not different to the business, like not to have, but the data person has this target of, you need to, I don't know, train yourself in Spark till the end of the quarter or whatever, I don't know. But I that's what I say in interviews. I'm like, you enter, you come on as a data scientist, whatever, data analyst or engineer, but the team you work for, you win together, but you lose together. So I think that really makes it like that common interest in what are we solving for, and that they all have the same objectives. It's tricky because you will have people that want to work in a very academical data sort of non-business way, but I do not believe that works. Like first-hand empathy, I would expect every of my analysts to at least once a month go and be part of the lab and really listen in. What are the problems? Because you would be surprised of what sort of problems agents have, because we're most of the time technically more advanced. I don't want to offend anyone, but I remember making an apprentice back in Germany. I did an apprenticeship at an agency for 3 days or something, and you'd be surprised about some processes, thinking kind of, oh, they need all those fancy algorithms and whatnot, and in the end it can be easier, but you only get that if you see how
you understand
things work, if you understand the problems of that person, and not because you are kind of your world evolves around you and you're in this amazing sort of AI and ML, and you're like, well, maybe
we can just chuck that at the problem.
I keep on making that joke. Sometimes, you know what, statistics all great, the average is fine. You can do a lot with average and mean and all of that. I am joking.
Yes, I know you are.
With humor, you get a long way as well.
So I think that's brilliant in terms of just being able to focus on the business challenge, and I think that's what a lot of organizations, they tend to have the data conversation more so than what are we trying to achieve here. And I've often walked into rooms where they're just literally talking about data, and I think, Why would you do that? It's the wrong conversation. So it's really great that you're having that sort of, you're flipping on its head and looking at it from a much more strategic perspective.
So just to give you an example, so last week we had a data science roadmap workshop, and what I did was to say, we're not going to come up, like, I don't want to hear all of the sort of technical great stuff you've read out there. Those are the 5 objectives we have as a company, and those are the biggest target groups. And I want you to think about, for instance, data revenue, indirect or direct, or new homes. So new homes is one of a very big target group that we want to increase our market share. And I'm like, what do we do as a data team to increase the market share for that target group?
Correct.
And I gave the team what's the target group like? What do they do? What's the background? How many do we have? What sort of revenue do we make? So you need to also give people that, you need to include people. I think that's one of the things that I see in some companies, when you're like, data doesn't really have a seat at the table. Maybe the sort of C-level management does, but you have smart people in your teams. They know exactly, because they get all these questions all day, every day. Put them in, like, if I would passionately give one advice to people on my level, like, or outside of data, take those amazing data people to your workshops, to your brainstorming sessions, because they know exactly the sort of, they see that with a different lens. And I find that so valuable if you have that in the room as well. But I would say that is still something that doesn't happen too often. I hear that a lot from my peers when we talk about so were your analysts involved or your scientists involved, and you are only involved at a later stage.
Yes, and I think being there from the beginning will get the trust as well, and the understanding of, okay, I understand where you're going and I understand where you're heading, as opposed to, like you said earlier, I go off for 3 months and I come back with the most wonderful application that no one will use. So, I hear that a lot from people. We tend to get involved much later on in the conversations. I mean, I remember being in the same, it's a long time ago. I used to run insight teams way back, in the day in 2000, where the analysts wouldn't even be part of the conversation at all, and they were always thought of as technical people. Why do we want technical people in these meetings? They're just going to talk jargon, and I, to change that culture, that narrative. So that's what I wanted to get onto. How did you? I mean, Zoopla's got a culture. It's got a culture that exists. It's always been there, but suddenly, everybody's talking digital transformation, data, cloud, blah blah blah. It's coming out of everyone's mouths, and it's the big trend. How did you start to build your data function and infuse that into the culture of Zoopla? How did you help that along and not have a siloed effect, because you are the data people and we're just a data function?
Well, one of the things we started in January is an initiative that's called the Data Superheroes.
Oh, great.
And so everybody can get involved in the company, everybody. There's a Slack channel, but also that means training. We have more than 170 people now that get involved, but that's where you get information on training, on, it was very, very important for us to say, you don't have to know anything. Like, if you're interested, if you have a bit of a passion for data, be part of this group. So we share, like, just on Friday, there's going to be a training on data visualization, and we get external people in that really, gotta make it fun. So that's one of the things, and the interest is really high, which is great. I think to have embedded people within the teams, and this is not like, it must sound like, it worked from day one. We're still figuring it out.
Sure.
Like always, you need to kind of understand also things might change along the way. But engineering wise, it's so the lead data engineer reports into me, but she would be part of the engineering leadership from the rest of the gang, of the team, of the company as well. So I think that's that's really important as well. I think it's building relationships. You have to, like my head of analytics, like we literally do stakeholder mapping to say, okay, who do you take care of? Who do you take care of? To kind of always be, I mean, that's,
of course.
otherwise, but yeah, I'm not gonna lie, it's still a way to go to really, because I think the company needs to, you need to see the benefit of it. And I think like that's definitely happening in terms of a year ago or two. But I think it's all steps, like having a community of practice, having a, training people, like literally just sitting down and explaining and not being afraid. No one should be afraid to ask questions. What we can also do is we have a value at Zoopla, which is called Know Your Audience. And I love to link that back a lot to, you got to know your audience to understand who you're building for. So that helps us have that conversation. Testing, like multivariate testing is a big topic. So we use external partners as well that come in, and why reinvent the wheel sometimes, there's external partners that come in and would do big workshops with business cases, really, okay, those are those two things we want to talk about today. We invite engineering and product design. I think that combination as well. So
excuse me.
Oh, bless you.
Sorry about that.
No, it's all good.
Oh, must be my hay fever.
It's that time of year again. So I think it's a combination, and believe me, like there's still a way to go. Because also, hiring and onboarding people, like the first thing was clear, I need to build a great team, like really, and I'm so proud of the team. They're amazing, so smart. And it's kind of the next, and so willing to help each other and support. I think that's really what I love about it, because I know with my peers, and I didn't do that on my own, oh my God, no, with my sort of leadership team to build up a team that can now, you need to have the people in place first. You need to kind of have that culture, and then, and I literally told the exec when I moved to London, I said, this is my diagnostic. This is what we're going to do. But do me a favor and leave me alone for the next 3 to 4 months, because honestly, I need to
work it out.
Restructure the team. I need to hire. I think last year we interviewed probably for more than 300 hours.
Wow.
To find, but of course, then onboarding in a new setup and all of this, creating a team that all of a sudden you have all those smart individuals, but how do they work together? And then comes the business part, and how do you talk to design, and how I think I really want to make that sure that that's sort of, it's a journey. It's I think.
No, I think you're right. One of the things that just struck me in my mind is a lot of questions I get about where you sit in the organization and where you report to. So who do you report into?
I report into the CPTO.
The what?
CPTO.
Okay, what does that stand for?
Well, it's product and tech together.
Ah, okay.
Chief.
Okay. Product technology officer.
Yes.
Great. Okay. So you're
and I've had it differently.
Yeah. Okay.
In previous jobs, I reported to the CPO, CMO. It does help because you don't have this us against them product, because in analytics and data science, you want to be very product focused, but at the same time, but engineering is always holding us back. I'm like, no, it's us. It's all of us.
Yes.
So I would tell the data engineers just as much, if we don't get that model out or that feature or whatever, it's all of us, or I mean, now it's our data infrastructure. So I'm expecting every analyst and every scientist to do some Q&A. Because we're just getting a new infrastructure out, like I said. It's I know there's very different ways out there.
No, I think it was just an inquisitive something that came up in my mind over the last probably 2 weeks. I've been discussing this with many people, and I don't think there is really a defined, specific, or prescriptive answer to it. It can vary in many different industries, but what you said about marrying sort of product and technology and data within all of that makes sense. especially in your industry, because it is very product driven. And so that, you know, having, so would the sort of product managers, would they'd be in the business and they'd be heavily embedded within those sort of data teams at testing and requirements and really gathering pace through that sort of, would they be leading that product development?
Yeah. So the VP product reports also into the CPTO. So we're peers. And the teams work together. Like I said, the analyst, a designer, product manager, engineer, researcher, they would all be part of one product team, and they would own one specific part of the website, one specific product. But the product manager sort of, leads that. That's the objective. I mean, they should, you know, they do that, of course, together. But in the end, it's about the business roadmap.
Yeah, of course it is. Yeah, of course. And are there different techniques that you employ to start to design and right up at the front? You know, I've recently been talking a lot about design thinking, and then, you know, having more sort of human experience, or, you know, the sort of the customer interface or computer interface, those types of people, or user experience. Do you get that design element up front, and then, you know, weaving that all the way through until production?
In the best sense, and in the best case, sort of, yes. Because as Zoopla also has a huge, big design function. They almost started in the same way. That director of design is also my peer, so we would be in the room together at least once a week. Now we have stand-up, so we see each other every day.
Yeah.
But we are, for instance, very, very aware of how we need to work even closer together, and our teams need to work much closer together, because that's when research, and, you know, I can't emphasize enough how the combination of the research and the insights that you generate is so powerful. Like, I keep on telling my peer, you know what, if you present an analysis, or you want to go for a product idea or whatever, and then you say, and 10 of our agents actually totally agree to this data, I'm like, that's so powerful. So we are we are working on, you know, crafting that message more within the company for people to use that.
No, but
we're not there yet.
But it sounds like you're putting the right processes in place, and you're bringing the right amount of people together at the right levels, and, you know, giving them the tools, but also giving them that space to create, that's what it sounds like to me.
I hope so.
No, it sounds fantastic.
I think, like, again, you know, there's lots of trial and error as well. Like, some stuff works better in some teams than other stuff, of course. So, and honestly, I can't, like, people kind of sometimes say, oh, but, you know, you've done this in a different real estate portal, so you just kind of do whatever you did there. And I can tell you, not everything works that has worked in a different place. So, and things evolve so fast. So whatever happened, like, worked 3 years ago, doesn't mean it works anymore. So I'm also a huge believer that the future of sort of those technical business analysts, let's say, or analysts that know some Spark and Python and whatnot, if you have a really good business background, you can be a data product manager anytime soon. Like, I think that's sort of where that goes, you know, that a very data savvy person would lead those kind of teams, but there you need the business background. And I think that's kind of, that will be different in 2 years' time. That's why I say, when I talk about sort of career opportunities for the team and the people in my team, I'm like, well, if you've got it figured out in a product team to understand design thinking, but also I think testing is such, like, test your ideas, MBT, just and that's a craft, for instance, that we are still teaching the company to do. Like, why is that important? Why? And it sounds so obvious, but that's still something where we are more teachers right now, I think.
So on that point, I know that, you know, the whole data space, analytics and so on, I believe it's getting better, but it's still very male dominated in that sense. What would you say to the next class, the wave of young girls out there who are thinking about taking a career up in data and analytics, or getting into data science or engineering? What would you say to them, that they need to start developing in the skills and types of people that they should be thinking, or role models? What would you suggest to them would be a good path?
Would be a good path. Well, just any of that, I'm really sorry for my language, but any of that bullshit that mathematics is not for girls. Like I heard it
Yeah.
when I was
Oh,
10 or
really?
12 or whatever.
Wow.
Yeah, lots of people still do. My niece is gonna turn 14. She thinks math is nothing for girls. I'm like,
What?
that's totally crazy.
Oh my
We're in
goodness.
2021. So anyway,
Wow. That's crazy.
I am very lucky that the team at Zoopla, the data team, is hugely diverse. And I sometimes ask them as well, so why, what sort of, I think what makes them, why did they take up those kind of careers and everything? And it's really, I think it has a lot to do with sort of the surroundings you're in, the sort of, if you have those kind of conversations around, in not making it so, like, I sometimes almost feel like because we point it out so much, it's just so special. Like, it's like, oh wow, you're a woman in tech, that's amazing. It's like pointing out that a guy can do childcare,
Yeah.
Oh my
I
God,
know.
you didn't kill your child. Wow.
Well done. Good pat on the back. Yeah.
I wish it was normal, but what I thought a bit about it the other day. Someone said, what would you tell your 16 or whatever? But just go for it, honestly. Like, where it's so interesting. Like, if you're interested in figuring out stuff, you don't have to be a statistic genius or whatever. Yeah, you need so many different skills in being in data. You need the good translator, you need the good visualization. Not a lot of people are actually good at that. We have so many great technical people, but if you ask them to present something, then you're like, oh God, I can't, I'm not going to let you talk in front of the CEO. I'll do that rather with someone else. So I think it's so diverse, the topic in itself. It's not tech coding. I mean,
no.
Sorry, I don't know when was the last time I coded something in my job, but yeah.
So let me sort of narrow the question down a little bit. If you could look back at yourself and say, now in the position that you're in, what are the top 3 skills that now today you think you didn't realize were important maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago? What are the skills now that you would say, wow, I wouldn't have thought that those would be the things that I would be focusing on?
I think if you think of a leadership role in data, as in my role, I definitely say being a coach and mentor.
Right.
So I and that's not probably very specific to data. It's in general probably for leadership. I sign that, because you're ultimately responsible for careers of the people that in your team. As part of it, of course, they are they have their own responsibility. Yeah. But like I said, I think. This is a skill I wouldn't be surprised, but I think they don't teach that very well. It's this writing a business case. Like I hardly see any in the interviews with data scientists, analytics a little bit, but with data scientists, they hardly know how to write a proper business case.
Okay. Interesting.
So it wouldn't be something where I'm totally surprised today that that's a skill you need. But it's something I definitely would tell my 18-year-old self, take more time to do that. And data visualization, I think it's all about, because you can, all of the, and I wish I would have learned Python earlier, to be honest, but okay, that's a different thing for me. I think I'm probably design thinking, product development. If you've got that figured out, you're gonna have a really, really awesome career.
That's great.
In that area.
Yeah. Well, Antje, look, thank you so much for being on the show today. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you, and I think we could, keep talking about so many different things. No, it's an absolute pleasure. So tell, if where can people find you? Where, if they want to get in touch?
LinkedIn. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on Twitter as well. But I'm not a big Twitter person, but LinkedIn, I guess. Yes.
Awesome.
That's where
Well,
you
thank
find
you
me.
so much.
Thank you so much. It's been great. I could, yes. Awesome topics.
We can have part two.
What gets me. We can have part 2, yes.
Well, enjoy the rest of your week. Enjoy your holiday and your
so
pampering.
Much.
And I wish you well.
Same
Thank
to
you
you.
so
Thanks
much.
so much for having me. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.